And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, today on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, we have a very special guest. This man is a former WWE United States champion, a two-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion. He's a member of one of my personal favorite factions of all time. He is also the owner and teacher at the Academy Wrestling School. He is none other than Mr. We'll save that for later. Mr. Ken Anderson, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, man. That's me.
Thank you, man.
So
hey, want to lead off these questions, Matt?
Yeah, this one's gonna be really simple. Who or what made you fall in love with pro wrestling?
Really simple answer, Steve Austin. Yeah, I remember I was sort of a wrestling fan back in the 80s when they would have like Saturday night's main events. Every once in a while, my dad would let me watch it. But I just, there was a certain age where watching cartoons wasn't cool anymore. And at least in my school, watching wrestling wasn't cool anymore. And I just sort of fell into that. I fell off. And I didn't get back on until like 97 when Austin was just starting to become really, really hot. I was at a friend's house. And the thing is like, I always kind of gave him a hard time about being a wrestling fan. He would talk about it all the time. And I knew that he was a big fan. And one night it was just the two of us at his house. And he was like, we're watching Raw tonight. No questions asked. And I watched begrudgingly. And I saw this bald son of a bitch drive to the ring in a pickup truck with a 6-pack of beer on his lap. And just his whole demeanor, the way that he carried himself, like, get the hell out of my way to the camera guy. And I was like, okay, all right, that guy's cool. But everything else still sucks. It's fake wrestling. And then every week I started watching just to see what he would do. And then, Undertaker's kind of cool too. And then, it just I slowly but surely got sucked into being a fan of everything. And then once I became a fan, I was like hooked. I remember going to work. That's all we would talk about for hours and hours. We'd call each other because I worked at a nuclear power plant as a security guard. And we had these different stations. And we'd just call and talk about what happened on Raw. So, yeah, Austin.
Okay.
So when you got into the business, Mr. Anderson, what was the biggest misconception of the business when you had?
Well, I think people who are interested in getting into the business, like, it's not real, right? We're working together. It's fake, so to speak. I get that. When people say that, it doesn't offend me. I understand it. I mean, it is like we're telling stories of good versus evil. But you still have to put in a lot of work. It's still very competitive, and it's very real in the sense that, like, you still have to be an athlete to a degree. If nothing else, you're portraying an athlete, right? So you have to be able to, do things. And I would say this: you don't necessarily have to be a body guy anymore to be in this, or ever really. You don't have to be somebody that looks like Ultimate Warrior to be successful in this business, but you do have to be in shape. Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, they don't have abs and 6-packs, but they can get in the ring and go for an hour. Every night they could do an hour, and they'd be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something big. If I will say, looking at a lot of the guys that came out of Ohio Valley Wrestling, like around early 2000, specifically 2002, you've got you've come out alongside people such as like John Cena, Randy Orton, Shelton Benjamin, Brock Lesnar. Like, who are some of those people that you I'm sorry, words aren't coming through to me. It's like, who are some of your like favorite wrestlers who have come out of that time period to work with? Who are your favorites?
Bobby Lashley comes to mind. When I first got to OVW, I reported on a Tuesday, or I actually moved down on a Tuesday. I called Dreamer and I said, "Hey, I'm in Louisville. Can I stop by at some point?" And he thought like I was just there searching for an apartment. I was like, "No, I'm moved in. And he goes, "Oh, well then you can start tomorrow. Go to TV and introduce yourself." He goes, "Go knock on the back door. Somebody will let you in and just say you're here." And I went. I knocked on the door, and I was pretty jacked at the time. Like I was, not like I am now, but I was in a pretty good shape. And I remember I knocked on that door, and fucking Bobby Lashley opened the door, and I just remember thinking, God, I'm in trouble. Like I'm not gonna make it. Because he just, Bobby doesn't look real. Bobby, a boogeyman. There was a guy, Paul Burchill, who I think was, really awesome. There were so many people that were the tag team, Johnny Nitro, Eminem, right?
Yeah.
Joey Mercury, Johnny Nitro, like those guys were awesome. It just felt like everybody there had the potential to go up to the active roster. And when Paul Heyman and like, to be fair, people were like trickling up, every once in a while. But when Paul Heyman got there, it was week after week after week. It was just constantly churning out new talent, and he was coming up with ideas for people. It was really cool time.
So you mentioned Paul Heyman. You are considered the first or one of the first Paul Heyman guys. What is in your? Do you have any interesting Paul Heyman stories, like funny or just stories that would be something that you want to share?
Yeah, Paul changed my life entirely. I was at OVW for 5 months or so, and I was working hard, but I really wasn't finding my groove. And this is not a slight against Jim Cornette, but like Jim just didn't see in me the same things that Paul Heyman apparently saw in me. He was just like, he's a guy, he's got a good look, but where do we go with this? What do we do with it? And so I was just sort of every week, or it wouldn't even be every single week. It would be like, every other week I would get a match on TV, and it would just be against a random opponent. No storyline or anything like that. And when he left, when he got fired and Paul Heyman came in, Paul pulled me aside. He said, "I want to talk to you in the office." And he said, "You're the next guy out of here." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Well," he's like, "I've been a fan of yours since I first met you." He goes, I've liked your demeanor, your look. I think your work is great. Your promos are great." He said, "I'm going to do so much stuff with you over the course of the next few weeks that they will notice you. You will get called up." And to be honest, at the time, even today, when somebody tells me something like that or anything similar, like we're going to do this, I take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of people promise you the moon and offer nothing in return. They have visions of grandeur sometimes, but no way to like follow through with it. And that night, it was the first TV taping that he was a part of that he had the pencil for. He wrote, I was in a promo to start the show off with Mickey James. There was another promo a little later, and I ended up having a 30-minute segment on an hour-long show with Brent Albright. And I think that was when he said, "I want you to go out there, cut the ring announcer off, dress him down, and then do your own intro." And that's when I did that. I said my last name for the first time. And when I came back to the curtain, people were like, yeah, I just had a 30-minute match with Brent Albright. And they were like, dude, when you said your last name twice, man, that was fucking awesome. I'm sorry, can I swear on here?
Oh,
Yeah.
you're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
So, and it was like he did exactly what he said he was going to do. And every week I was getting tons of TV time, and he was really creative. And 5 weeks after we had that conversation, Tommy Dreamer called and said, hey, they want you to come up to Raw or SmackDown this week. They want to see your whole gimmick. They want you to do your intro stuff, and then the rest is history. Like,
The chat's blowing up with lots of questions, and one of the questions I asked was on my sheet. So I know we're jumping all over the place. Can you share with us your thoughts on what it meant to you regarding you being Eddie Guerrero's last opponent?
I think, it's a weird question. It's always been sort of hard for me to answer, because like it sucks Eddie's dead. It kind of sucks that I was the last person to wrestle, but like in a way it's cool that I was the last person to wrestle this guy. I was just fortunate enough to spend some time in a locker room with him. I rode with him for a little bit, was able to pick his brain. I wrestled him, obviously, got some great pointers and feedback. And I just, what a great guy. It sucks that he's gone, but I'm honored that I was the last guy to wrestle him.
Sorry about that.
I'd rather he was still here though,
Absolutely. So I think that there was one that I had that somebody mentioned in chat. One match I think I actually remember watching quite well, even though it may not seem like one, was your match again with MVP going up against the Brothers of Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to ask, like, what was it like there getting to work with MVP, as you know, who's still a manager right now, going up against the Brothers of Destruction, two great Hall of Famers right there.
It was crazy, and honestly, once you get into the WWE, you don't stop becoming a wrestling fan. You don't stop, being a wrestling fan. So I remember the first time I was in the ring on a house show, and I was getting to wrestle The Undertaker. And I remember the lights went out, and I heard that gong for the first time. And I'm standing in the ring waiting for him to come to the ring, and we're gonna wrestle each other. And like, how the fuck did I get here? So it's still, it's like just this unlikely scenario. This is a guy that I've been watching on TV for years. This is The Undertaker. How is this happening? And I absolutely love MVP. Is one of my favorite people in the world. I still talk to him to this day on a pretty consistent basis. And just being able to like work off of each other. We had that like sort of reluctant. We didn't like each other. Our characters didn't like each other, but we had to be a tag team because Teddy Long kept putting us in these scenarios, and we just had so much fun. And we were married. MVP and I were practically married to Undertaker and Kane for like at least like 6 months to a year. We would do all the house shows. After Raw or after SmackDown, oftentimes they'll have what they call like a main event dark match. So it's I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but like it's just a match that just goes out to the house. And oftentimes it's just to send people home happy. You just want to give them some stuff that they want to see that makes them say yay and go home with a smile on their face, especially if the show ended on a negative note. And I remember like MVP and I used to, one of them would do the stereo choke slam tombstone. Well, the choke slam is, I don't want to say hard to take, but like it hurts way more than the tombstone. The tombstone's just like, you just go for a ride. You're upside down. He takes care of you. But the choke slam, you got to jump. You take this big bump. So MVP and I used to rock, paper, scissors every night to see, all right, who's taking the choke slam and who's taking the tombstone.
Nice.
And what a crazy thing too that I remember, and as I'm sitting here today, out of the company, right? Been out of the company since 2009. I remember almost being like, because being on the road is exhausting. You would have 3 days of house shows, TV day. It's from noon until like 10 o'clock at night. It's nerve-wracking. You never know, everything's getting changed. You're getting pulled in a bunch of different directions. Hey, come take pictures here. Hey, I need you to, you've got a promo segment, you've got a match segment. And then they would come up and say like, oh, you got a promo segment, a match segment, you got to take pictures. And you and MVP are going to work Undertaker and Kane in the main event dark match. And just being like, fuck, exhausting. Well, it's just so weird that I had that mentality ever. Because when I was working dark matches, when I was trying to get into the WWE, I would hear some of the guys, usually like some of the lower card guys who weren't getting enough TV time or weren't getting much TV time, they would be complaining. There would be some complainers, they're complaining about this and that. And I remember thinking I remember people complaining that they only had a 5-minute match. And I was like, fucking, I'll take it.
Yeah, right.
You get as much time as you get.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes is more time than anybody else is getting right now. Like that real estate is precious. So, but I remember, how easily we sort of slide into that, where this job that I have that is amazing, that millions of people watch and dream of becoming, it just becomes another job at some point.
Yeah.
So the next one is something that I'm sure you talk about quite frequently. I just want to hear you tell the story again. The Undertaker First Blood match, probably one of my favorite of yours in WWE. The story you told was amazing. I just want to.
Which one? What was the?
Well, no, like that match at Survivor Series. I feel you guys told an amazing story in that.
Oh, gotcha.
Take us through like that match in and of itself. Like, take us through that match, I guess.
Well, I mean, rewinding a little bit, I had a match with Batista at the Great American Bash, and it was originally supposed to be Batista and Mark Henry, and Mark Henry hurt himself, needed surgery, and they slid me into that position. I remember not being sure how, is this just going to be kind of a squash match? What is this going to I hadn't wrestled on that level. I had wrestled and defeated a bunch of, former world champions, but I just didn't know, is this going to be a long-term thing or is this a one and done? And when I got to the building, I remember Arn Anderson telling me this is a competitive match. It's going to be 50-50, it's not, and so we put that match together. If anybody goes back and watches, I think it was Great American Bash 2007. I got busted open hard way early, very early, within the first minute. We roll out of the ring. He runs my head into the steps, and I just split my forehead open on the edge of those steps. Started bleeding, right? And then at the end of the match, he runs me, and he loses his cool, and he doesn't let go of the 5. He gets counted out because he doesn't let me go after the 5 count, right, in the corner. So he gets disqualified, and then he just loses his shit, beats the fuck out of me some more. And he went and he ran me to the post. And when he ran me, it was I think we were both a little excited, and he gave me, I was already going, and he gave me a little extra, and I wasn't able to like dip out of the way, and I hit that post like if you watch it back, it almost, you can almost see the ring move, and I just started pouring blood, right, and we get to the back, and it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. And the fact that I had just like worked through that, and I walked back, I'm covered from head to toe in blood, and they were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm cool." What? Do I got something on my face? Like, that was in Vince's mind. He was like, "Yes, all right, you're tough." So then, like a week later, I remember I was on a house show, and Taker came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, I just want you to know that I liked what I saw with Batista, and I think you and I could do some good business, and I'm gonna ask the boss if we can work together." And I was like blown away that he told me that. But again, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear. So I just didn't I try not to get too excited about it. And then a week later he came up and he was like, did you hear what we're doing? And I said, no. And he goes, well, we're going to start a program next week. I think I was the United States champion at the time. And they were like, we got to get the title off you, because they felt like, Taker was above the United States championship. I didn't need to have that title at that time. So, and then we're going to go into a program and we're going to get at least 2 pay-per-views out of it, possibly 3. And yeah, so the first blood match, was that the second match we had? The second pay-per-view
series. So
it's the second pay-per-view match we had, because we just had one that was just a normal match, I think. And then we had the first blood match.
That was second.
We had the first blood match, and then we had the last ride, the casket or the hearse match, whatever, right?
Right.
This is kind of a funny story. So he obviously, Taker was just so cool and so giving to me. Pulled me literally, come on, man. It was always crazy to me that, at least on SmackDown at the time, it was like all these people at the top of the mountain who would be throwing rope ladders over the side and offering their hands like, come on, we can all fit up here. The weather is fine. The air is fine up here, very helpful. And remember, we were in the middle of the match and we had some stuff planned out, but every time I worked with Taker, we just called a lot of stuff on the fly. And we were out there, and he was down on the mat, and he goes, "Give me a pile driver." And I'm like, okay. And I pulled him in, and I thought he's gonna backdrop me out of this. He's not gonna have him pile drive him. But we hadn't talked about it, nothing. And I pull him in there, and I'm sort of waiting for him to backdrop me out of it. And he goes, "Give it to me." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I fucking picked him up and made sure it was nice and tight, and boom. Well, we get to the back, and I walk through the curtain, and Vince goes, "Just come here." And I went over, and he said, "Look," he goes, "I know that wasn't your call. I think oftentimes he's too giving. He really wants to put you over. But I don't think that was necessary." And he's like, "I don't ever want to see that again." He goes, "There's only 2 people that I allow to do a pile driver on this show, and you're not one of them." But he was he wasn't mad at me. He knew that it was Taker's call in the first place. So just kind of funny.
Crazy. I know we've talked about Matt mentioned that you run your own training school, the Academy. So can you talk to us a little bit about the Academy? I watch it on Instagram all the time. You go live, I think, once a week on Instagram. Dude, you're in shape. I got to tell you that. The way you move in that ring with those guys that you're training. So can you tell us a little bit about your training camp and how that's going? And
yeah, I I never thought that I would get as much enjoyment out of helping these people. And I just try to, I try to understand that like everybody learns at a different pace. And I try to be accommodating as accommodating as possible, and just teaching them the basics and giving them a solid foundation. Because like, I think once you have this is cliche, right? Everybody says it, but like when you have that solid foundation of certain patterns of movement, then everything else maps onto those. So if you get the easy stuff down pat, then that's when you can start like expanding and branching off and doing different moves. So we got a new class starting Monday, and we usually run a class. We'll run a class for 3 months. So right now, tuition covers 1 year of training at the academy. We run a new cycle every 3 months. So I'll have somebody come in. We'll go through all the basics. We'll learn everything, and then they'll usually go on to the advanced class, and then or recycle. And actually, those people then sort of help out with the next cycle of people that come in, because I feel like they say that you don't truly know how to do something. You're not good at it until you can show others how to do it. And I feel like just helping out that next cycle really helps them in the long run.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we train 4 nights a week right now. We used to train 5 nights a week. We would have Mondays and Wednesdays are beginners, Tuesdays and Thursdays are advanced, and then which you see because I post those. Sometimes I post Tuesday and Thursday. Like tomorrow night or tonight, we'll go live again at about 8:00 with some matches. And then we would do promo class on Friday and film review. Like we pop in, like one of the things that I really want to do right now is go over that match that Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns had at Elimination Chamber, because I think it was absolutely magical. It's one of the best matches I've seen since Taker and Shawn Michaels. That is my humble opinion. Just magic. The fact that they didn't touch each other for 4 minutes and 45 seconds after the ding ding ding, and it was good. But yeah, so
okay. Thank you.
And we try to cover everything. We try to cover safety, etiquette, how to present yourself to other employee or other promoters. How to do things, how to tell a story.
Bill?
Okay. I had a big question up here from one of our viewers, All Wrestling for Life, Mike, a good friend of mine. He's actually met you. He's actually gotten the time to meet you at one point in time. He wanted to know, like, how did you like doing a lot of your stuff with Sting and TNA, especially when we had the all famous Joker Sting?
So again, I'll reiterate that I am a wrestling fan, right? I wasn't.
Yep.
So anytime I've gotten to work with these guys, I still pinch myself to this day. Like as we're sitting here talking, like I fucking can't believe that I worked with these guys. And I remember when I first broke into the business, I went down and I did a dark match for TNA. TNA was doing their weekly pay-per-views. They were doing a pay-per-view every Wednesday. I think it was an hour or two. Do you guys remember that? It was like $5.
Yeah.
It was like $5 for you could order the pay-per-view. And I went down and I remember Road Dogg was there and he said, "You remind me of a young Sting." Because I had the bleach blonde hair and everything. And I would hear that from time to time. Like people would say, you kind of remind me of young Sting. And then, so then when I get to TNA and we're working together, they told us, "Hey, you guys are going to work together." And I remember Sting pulling me aside and he was like, "Hey man, I just want you to know that I'm open to doing anything. If you have any cool ideas or anything, I'm game, man." I'm fucking game, which is just awesome, right? Like he's Sting, he's a legend. And I said, actually, what if I dressed up as you, like when you were Surfer Sting? And he fucking loved it. And the icing on the cake there was I ended up dressing up like him like 3 or 4 different times.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought his old gear. So it was actually Sting's old wrestling gear that I was wearing,
Awesome.
which is, by the way, like he's way bigger than I am. So it was like, yeah. And then who better to do the face paint? Like he knew how to do the face paint. So here we are sitting in the back in our locker room, and Sting would paint my face to match whatever gear I was wearing. It's just,
awesome.
And there's that little, again, I wasn't a wrestling fan when I was a kid, but my mind went there, I'm like this kid. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, I'm one that likes to ask weird and kind of obnoxious questions at some time. There's rumors about John Cena and Randy Orton being the reason for your departure of WWE. Is there any truth behind that, or is that like typical WWE rumors, complete bullshit?
To be honest, I don't know for sure. But I will say this, like, no matter what, say that is true, say it's 100% correct. The way that I conducted myself up to that point, they shouldn't have been able to just, like, if they went to Vince and said, hey, you need to, fire this guy. Like, had I not acted like a complete asshole, and had I not just been punching the clock for the last 2 years, I don't think Vince would have said, you know what, I'm sick and tired of hearing this guy in a negative light. I had been in the public eye a few times for negative things, and even some stuff that happened backstage that was kind of negative. And I think he was just tired of hearing it. And so, again, I will not blame Randy Orton or John Cena for getting me fired. I blame me for getting fired.
Okay.
So, I loved watching you more at Impact with Aces and Eights and all that stuff.
One of the greatest factions of all time.
Absolutely one of the great. I mean, Billy, he's still in Impact. What was the main difference in working in WWE compared to Impact?
At the time, it was obviously the crowd size. I was getting paid good money. The WWE money was stupid at the time, right? Like, so it's a big change in pay. I was still getting paid well when I was at TNA. I guess it was just WWE is this finely tuned machine that if it's not working efficiently, Vince will pull a piece out and he'll plug that hole, and it works and it runs more efficiently. And they're constantly, and I felt like TNA didn't quite have that, and I'm not complaining. This just is what it is. We were on a show in Baltimore. We ran at a baseball stadium, like a AAA ballpark. The place probably held like 6,000 to 8,000 people. And we drew like 162 people. And that night, Ring of Honor ran across town and they sold out a 1,000-seat arena. Like, it was packed. And people were showing the pictures, showing the differences. And it was just stuff like that was kind of frustrating. And I remember too doing my first appearance. So whenever I would do appearances for WWE, if I was going to be in person, they would always pick you up in either a limousine or a town car. Somebody would be there with you. You'd have like a handler that would field any questions. They make sure that you would go in the back door, because celebrity is an illusion to a degree. I'm just a dude. I'm just another guy. But if you present yourself as, like, if I walked in through the front door, it just doesn't have the same level of, it doesn't look the same, doesn't feel the same. So there was always this, like, they did everything big. And I remember too, if I would do phoners, so we would do on a Wednesday, I would call like 10 different radio stations in whatever town we were going to. There would always be somebody from the office that would call me and say, "Are you ready to do this?" "Yes." "Okay, here we go. We're going to talk to so-and-so in such and such a city." And then they would introduce me to the host. Then I would do the interview, and then they would say, "All right, you ready to go to the next one?" And then we would, that's the way it was, very professional. And then I remember, like, the first appearance that I did for TNA was, "Hey, you have an autograph signing at this cell phone store. Here's the address, and just park and go in the front door." It was like,
So more professional.
Or, "Hey, we want you to do some phoners. Here's the number. Call this number tomorrow morning and do the call." So that was just sort of like, wow, there's such a huge difference between these two companies.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
But I will say, I loved my time in TNA, and I loved working for Dixie Carter. And the locker room was always fucking awesome. There was nobody walking on eggshells thinking this was going to be their last day. It was like we were all just there. And even if we were frustrated with, like, some of that mismanagement stuff, we still went out there and we wanted to give 100% to the few fans that would be there.
That's cool.
That is awesome. Looking at some other questions here, seeing that I won't forget one match I know of yours that I've watched time and time again that for me I always get excited whenever I watch it. It was your match with Jeff Hardy for the TNA Championship at the time. I just want to say, what was it like going through that match, and just the overall thought of it?
To be honest, I don't remember the match. There's so much stuff that I've done in the business that I remember I wrestled Jeff, but I don't remember what we did.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'll watch, like, my wife wasn't a wrestling fan. She never watched when I was on TV. And she wanted to sort of like, "Hey, I want to see what you did." So we went on Peacock one day, and I found out whatever the first date was that I debuted on SmackDown, and we started watching SmackDown. And we did like it was like a full year. And there were times where, like, I don't remember, I have no recollection of this match ever occurring. It was just kind of crazy. But I will say that Jeff was definitely one of my favorite people to work with. He was always super, super giving, always innovative. He was always like, "What can we do that's a little different?" Cool reversals, and just, he's always looking at too. He would tell me, one of my favorite things that Jeff Hardy would say to me was, "You shine when you sell." Those baby faces want the crowd to like them. And he would always, like, he was so good at getting sympathy from the audience, and he would come up with interesting ways for me to kick the shit out of him, for him to be fighting from underneath. And I just thought that was so cool. And I tell my students that all the time, like, sell. If you want people to get behind you and have sympathy for you, and that's what we're looking for. We want, as a baby face, you want the crowd to sympathize with you. Like, come on. And Jeff Hardy was one of the best examples of somebody that does that very well.
All right.
I'm going to pull my next question from the chat. Did you prefer the WWE style ring or the 6-sided ring? Like, what's your
definitely the WWE, the 4-sided ring. It was the ropes in the 6-sided ring are really tight. I like using WWE uses real rope. So I mean, the whole thing is that like running the ropes is you're trying to get momentum to either slingshot yourself into your opponent at a higher rate of speed, or you're trying to get your opponent to come back at you so that you can hit them. And using that like that elasticity. So when the ropes are like cables that don't give any, it's just it kind of ruins the illusion for me. I like seeing the ropes give, and you get that slingshot effect. I will say that the main difference is like there's a lot more room, a lot more real estate to work in the 6-sided ring. WWE always uses a 20-foot ring, and TNA and most other companies, pretty much everybody, uses an 18-foot ring.
Oh wow!
And I really, really, it takes a little getting used to, but that 20-foot ring is just like, a lot of times when you're in an 18, you got to figure out like, how do we make this look good? Because we're in a tighter space. You have to like have these different adjustments. Whereas like 20 feet, you have more room to play. So I prefer the 20-sided ring. I prefer the WWE ring. I prefer ropes. And the 6-sided ring was super stiff.
I live in Florida and I follow independent wrestling. I'm a huge independent wrestling fan down here. I follow XIW with Adrian Whisper, blah, blah, blah. Is there any independent talent that is coming out of your school, your training academy, that us wrestling fans need to look out for? And if so, can you drop the name so we can watch for him and see what goes on with them?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we've had some great talent come out of the school. Darius and Dante Martin are at AEW. Like they came out of our academy. Darius was our first graduate. They've kind of already made it. Then there's another local guy named Brandon Gore, Riley Jackson, Levy Cruz, JDX, Rampage Santana, the System, Drew Cipolla. Like these are all, they get it, and I think they could go far. And there's a new tag team that I just trained that just started having matches in the last year. They actually just graduated. I graduated from the academy. Alex Finley, the seasoning Alex Finley, and Prince Devo Knight are like, they're really young, they're really green, but they really get it, and they're good people too. So I think they're going to go far.
Awesome, thank you. Oh.
I'm probably, and honestly, like I'm probably forgetting a handful of people, and to them I apologize. But that's off the top of my head. Those names stand out to me right now.
I love watching Instagram. I'll put that thing on, and we're watching TV. I'll just have that up there. And you do amazing stuff with those young people, so I appreciate that. Thank
you. Actually, I wanted to say I was just talking to Vince, my producer on that Twitch channel. I think you guys know him. He's going to actually. He was in the business for several years. We're going to do things a little differently on Tuesdays. We're going to start next Tuesday, where Vince and one of his friends are going to do color commentary throughout the matches.
That'll be awesome, man.
And then lay out, and I'm going to go through the critiques and stuff like that. So there'll be like color commentary throughout the whole process. It won't be just
interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks for that.
Yep.
Yep.
That was all Vince's idea. So.
Wow. Well, okay. So going back to something you said earlier, you mentioned the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns match at Elimination Chamber. How much you really liked that? Have there been any like I guess like wrestling like any matches from wrestling pay-per-views or from any other different promotions that recently that you really give credit to right now? Like
Man, that's a tough one. I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling right now, honestly. Like I usually only watch if somebody will say to me like, "Hey, this so and so had a fucking phenomenal match. You got to check him out." That's generally when I'll look. I know I've seen some in the last couple of years, but I just can't put my finger on any of those at this moment.
It's all right.
So my last question before for the last go around here, what was your absolute, like, through WWE and TNA, what was your like favorite match that you worked? Like, what was you stand by that as the best match that I had?
I would have to say the match I had with Kurt Angle at Lockdown in 2009 or 2010 was, I loved it. I still, every once in a while, I'll show that match to somebody. It's always nice to be able to. I generally try to not make it a habit of forcing my students to sit and watch my matches. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that sort of happened or went on behind the scenes in particular matches that I'm able to like sort of talk about that are kind of interesting. And there was a lot of interesting things that occurred in that match. First of all, just Kurt Angle's storytelling ability is nuts. He's just an amazing talent. He's a cyborg in that he just goes when you're in the ring with Kurt Angle, it's like you have to be at a different level. He's always at 100. So yeah, I would say that. Obviously, the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania, the one that I won, WrestleMania 23, was a cool experience. But other than that, like I've been fortunate to have some decent matches and matchups, but it's other experiences too that are really special to me. Going over with WWE and visiting the troops in Iraq in, I think it was 2007 or 2008 that I went. And then some friends and I put together a tour to go back over to the Middle East. We went to different army bases, and we didn't wrestle this time, but we went over there and just did meet and greets and stuff like that. Visiting our wounded troops at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Maryland, doing Make-A-Wishes and stuff like that. Like that to me is just special.
We're all creators on TikTok, and we do all these podcasts. And I got one question. I'm going to bring in a bunch of people. They've asked this question over and over again. So first of all, we as creators, I would say thank you, Mr. Anderson, for being so humble. You're a very humble guy. Very humble for coming on our shows. I know you've been on the PWC. I know you've been on a lot of other different ones. And with the popularity of the wrestling podcast streams, etc., what has it been like having the opportunity to talk about your past WWE career in present day? What's that been like?
That's a really good question, actually. I think in a lot of ways, it has forced me to examine certain things that happened in my career and like genuinely think about them instead of just offering pat answers. The question you asked before about John Cena and Randy Orton, the way all that stuff went down, for years I had this giant chip on my shoulder and I blamed other people. And I think, as time wears on, you're able to look at things in a different light as I get older, hopefully wiser. So I think that's been the biggest thing, is just getting these different questions and having these conversations and really trying to think. Like my wife and I one of the questions I always get is the Eddie question. And like, told my wife, I'm like, how do I answer that? Like fucking, and you know, and we were able to like work through it. Like, be honest, just be honest. You know, it sucks, but it's a great honor to have had his last match. Like nobody else. Sorry.
You're
You're
fine.
good, man.
It's fine.
You're good.
Nobody else is able to say that. Fuck, I don't know why that got me.
I appreciate you being so honest. And
Yes.
honestly, so honest, man. Yeah, I can just say that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, Phil, you got anything else, or should we?
I think I've got one more, and
Okay.
I feel like this is a proper one to sort of like almost end this final round. So, I really liked what you really had to say about everything you say about the academy and everything that you've taught your students and that. What is like one of the what is like the one major piece of advice or one specific rule that you always teach your students? What is that one thing?
We on day one we go through like our list of rules and regulations. Number one is safety, and I would flip flop these. Safety has to be number one. It's a dangerous business. You're trusting somebody else is entrusting you with their lives and vice versa. But if I could flip flop these, I would. It's just like, and I think it applies to life in general. Just don't be a dick. You know, like be kind to others. Be kind to others. Help each other out. Look out for one another. One of the greatest things, my trainer on day one, when I first broke into the business, he said, remember the people that you step on your way to the top are the people that you're going to bump into on your way back down, because pretty much everything that goes up comes down. And then when I got to OVW, like I said, I reported to class on Wednesday, and then Thursday we would go in and Jim Cornette would review the TV taping from the night before. So we'd have the VHS tape, he'd pop it in the VCR, they'd wheel out this TV, he'd pop it in, and he would just dissect, and he would pick apart, like, you know, he would pause it every 10 seconds or every 15 seconds to say, like, this is why this works, or this is how this could have been done better. And he said on that day, and it was something that stuck with me, was if you know of somebody who this company would benefit greatly from, like if you know somebody that's talented, that would be a good addition to the roster, and you don't go out of your way to help them, to try to get them noticed, he said, you might as well admit to yourself and the rest of the world that you're the shits and that you're worried that somebody else is going to take your job. Because if you're confident, if you do everything that you're supposed to do, you're going to be okay. And it's better to have 10 people that are good than one person who's good and 9 people who suck.
Yeah. Was it time, Matt?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this for 6 weeks, and now I have you here. I feel like kind of a asshole to even attempt to do it.
No pun intended.
What he's saying, Mr. Anderson, is it's time for that Anderson off. So,
I mean, how am I going to go beat Mr. Anderson at his own game? I'm a little nervous.
So I think we need to have that. We need to settle the score here. And I mean, I think it'd be polite to let the guest go first, and then Matt can give his rendition of your
all right.
mic. So the floor is yours, my guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I hail from Green Bay, Wisconsin. We have good football in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I weigh in tonight at 235, thereabouts, pounds. Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson.
There we go.
There we go.
There we
You gotta
go.
wait for it. You
We're
gotta
waiting
wait.
for it. All right, Matt, it's your
Oh my
turn.
god! I now I'm gonna sound like a real asshole.
That's okay.
Okay.
So go ahead. It's yours, Matt. You got this.
He'll
Hold on.
critique you at the end. Don't worry.
No,
Yeah,
no
well,
pressure
yeah.
now. No pressure now.
Take a swig for the working man.
Weighing in tonight at an absolutely freaking astonishing 236.5 pounds. He hails from Green Bay, Wisconsin. The Packers are all right. They got beat by the Lions, but that's all right. He is Mr. Anderson. Wait for it. Anderson.
Good job, Matt.
That was pretty solid, man. I'm not gonna lie.
So, well, that's Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. I thank you, Mr. Anderson, for coming on the show. We would like to, if you could hold off for a couple seconds to be in the lobby after I end the podcast.
Yep.
I'm just going to play this in honor of you to end the show. Matt, thank you for coming on board. Phil, thank you. Again, Mr. Anderson, thank you.
Yep.
Huge
If
Pop
I could,
Wrestling- Yeah, go ahead.
if I could quickly, like, if anybody's interested, you can text me. If you're interested in wrestling, if you're interested in going to a wrestling school, text me 507-722-2776. That comes right to my phone, my wife's phone.
You said that.
And I will say that, like, if not everybody can live in the Twin Cities where we're located, not everybody can just pick up and move. But I want to help people out. I want to help people find something that works for them and get them into the business. So I am more than willing to help find a school near you or to give you suggestions on how to break into the business if it's something that really interests you. So please reach out to me.
Thank you, man. Mean a lot, you guys.
Okay.